Time to review the second episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 3, which is called Far From Home. What happened to the Hope That Is You Part 2? Hello, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all the geeky pop culture that I enjoy and consume and talk about here on this channel. If you like things like Doctor Who, comic books, the MCU, and of course Star Trek, please do hit that like button and subscribe. We're talking about the second episode of Star Trek Discovery Season 3 today, which is called Far From Home, which confused me a little bit because we had The Hope That Is You Part 1 last week. They called it Part 1. There's no Part 2. I mean, there's not just no Part 2 here. Looking at all of the list of all the episodes for this season, there is no Part 2 this season. It seems to be a thing though this season. They've also got Unification Part 3 all by itself, which of course, if you know your TNG, The Next Generation, you'll know that Unification's Part 1 and Part 2 were episodes in that series, so they're going a bit of an unorthodox route in having Part 3 in a completely different series, like, what is that, 90s, 2000, like almost 30 years later in for that part. So are we gonna have to wait 30 years for Part 2 of The Hope Is You? Who knows? Maybe we'll get it in Season 4. In terms of my overall thoughts of this episode, I thought it was a massive improvement on last episode. I think last episode really suffered from the fact that it was solely focused on Michael. And if there's one thing that I've been hoping that the show will do, and I think it has done to a large extent throughout Season 2, is move slightly away from it being a show where the main character is Michael Burnham. I think it needs to be a more ensemble cast, and I think that's probably the way they're going. Certainly from this episode, the focus was very much on the ensemble, which I was very pleased about. And I understand why they had that Michael Burnham focused episode last week. Narratively, with the setup they've got, it made sense. I get why they wanted to do that. I predicted the time jump that we were going to get this episode. Turns out it's a year later. I did not predict that I had hoped that they might have some more episodes where Michael and the Discovery crew were separated, and we might see more episodes, not where we would focus just on Michael, but where we would intercut between what the Discovery crew is doing in the time period and what Michael is doing in the time period. We didn't get that. We got her arriving at the end of the episode to save the day, but that's fine. I think that works as well. I just hope going forward that we get much more of the ensemble type nature that we got in this episode, because it was a really good ensemble episode. We actually got to see so much of the crew, and some of them were only fleeting. Some of the bridge crew officers, which we haven't had that much interaction with before, they've been there, they've been regular sort of background cast members, sort of think, Miles O'Brien in TNG, that kind of thing. They've been there, they've appeared in episodes, they've had the occasional line, but they haven't really had anything major. But we got all of those characters sort of name-checked and given a little minute or so just to let us know that they're still there. And I really like that, because big massive crash that we get at the beginning, which we'll talk about in a minute, I think, we could have been wondering, well, did anybody die? Is Linus dead? Please don't let Linus be dead. It's okay, he's not dead. We see him, and he gets to have a few lines. It's nice. I like the fact that they did that, and they took the time to do that. But yes, I think the fact that they went for the more ensemble sort of focus on this episode really helped it. The actual plot of the episode as well was much stronger than last week. I think that last week had some good scenes in it, but I was pretty gripped all the way through this one. Once the ship had crashed and they had ventured into the town area, the settlement, it kind of felt very sort of they had a lot of Wild West themes. When the bad guy comes into the bar, you hear the clanking of his boots, like he's got, what do they call them? Stirrups? Is that the right word? Stirrups on. And the kind of saloon bar had very sort of Wild West aesthetics as well. So that was all quite nice. Nice theme sort of running through that section of the episode. We got some really good stuff from Saru. Look, mostly I'm going to be talking about my likes, because honestly, there isn't that much that isn't massively nitpicky that I didn't like about this episode. I actually think it's probably one of my favourite Discovery episodes so far. Not absolutely my favourite, but I think it would be in the top 10. I really did enjoy this episode. In terms of the opening, we launched into a really sort of high drama aspect. I like the way that they gradually brought us to the emergency and from all the characters sort of coming around from being unconscious. The way that was filmed, kind of slowly, we got the sense that we were kind of put us in the action and put us in their scenario, because it started off very blurry. We didn't really know what was going on, much like they would have been. It kind of put us in their position, which I really liked. And yeah, it was dramatic. There was tension. We didn't know who was going to survive. We didn't know what was going to happen. There were great visuals. I think the visual effects team did a stunning job on this. It was just brilliant, and there was some good emotion in there as well. When it crashed, and the moment after they crashed, and they all realised that they survived, they did it, they managed to get down onto the planet safely, well, as safely as can be. That moment of elation, they all clap, they all cheer. It really felt quite heartwarming. And then it was kind of juxtaposed with Kaylee. That's her name. Is it Kaylee? The one that was at the helm. Kaylee kind of has this disorientated nature. She doesn't quite like she's been injured. She's got a head injury. Maybe something's wrong with her implant. We don't know. It's kind of brought up a couple of times throughout the episode that she's kind of feeling a bit discombobulated. And that contrasts quite nicely with the elation of everyone else on the bridge. I thought it was a really good opening to the episode. Fast-paced. It kind of felt, in terms of the pace, it started off very similar to last week's, where we had Burnham crashing onto a planet. But because there were more people to react, I thought that was a really strong scene too. But just because we had more people here reacting, I thought it worked even better than last week's. One of the highlights of this episode was definitely Saru, who just was a complete bust the whole way through. He is my favourite character on the show, I think, at the moment. Now Pike's gone. Pike was my favourite character. But Saru has always been my favourite before Pike arrived, and he's now my favourite after Pike has left. Saru is great, and here he shows that he is destined to be the captain of this ship. He's in command at the moment, but he hasn't got that official rank, but he so deserves it. The way he commands during the emergency while they're crashing, he's decisive, he makes the decisions, he's, sorts the situation out as best as he can. There are other moments where he shows he's a brilliant leader. When him and Tilly go into the town and they're walking, she's really scared and really nervous, and she says something along the lines of, I just keep talking because I'm really nervous. He is so supportive of her in that moment as well. He's got all the qualities of a good leader. He's supportive, he's commanding when he needs to be, he listens to ideas. He's the ideal captain, and I hope he gets that official title at some point this season. I also found it really interesting seeing him butt heads with Georgiou, because Georgiou, obviously, used to be an empress in the Mirror Universe. She doesn't like not being in charge, and you can see her trying to exert some kind of authority over the crew, effectively by bullying them. She barks, commands at them like she's in charge, even though she isn't. And she, belittles them constantly in order to try and manipulate them to do what she wants. And Saru, fair play to him, just cuts her off, holds up a hand, is like, stop. He's doing this for this reason. You go do this. And that kind of plays a couple of throughout the episode. And I think it's going to be a reoccurring theme throughout the season, seeing them two butt heads. I wouldn't be surprised if Georgiou tries to, especially after this episode and her seeing how much authority the courier wields in a kind of very despotic way, that she tries to, maybe she betrays the Discovery team at some point. Maybe she, I don't know, maybe we should get to that in the predictions section. So we've got the situation, we're on the ship, they are stranded in the ice, systems are all malfunctioning, they need repairing. There's a lot of repair work to do. They need some material that can probably be found in the nearby town. So Saru and Tilly set off there. And you get various members of the crew sort of interacting on the ship. there's a plot line with Stamets, who has just come around from being, isn't really fully recovered from the injury he suffered at the end of the last season, but is determined to get on with work. He has a whole nice bit. Well, he has two nice sort of interactions. First of all, with Culber. They're kind of like their relationship seeing played out in this situation is quite interesting. And then you get the Jet Reno stuff. Jet Reno, very funny in this. Like, one of my favourite funny bits in it was when her and Stamets are in engineering, and there's a guy in the background sort of doing some cleaning or something in a kind of hazmat suit, and she refers to him as the hazmat guy. The guy in the background just pipes up, goes, my name's Jean. And she's just, yeah, I've already forgotten that. I hope we see more of her this season. We kind of only saw her in a handful of episodes last year. I'm hoping she gets a bit more screen time this year. The stuff in the bar when Saru and Tilly get there continued to give us, flesh out the world a bit more of the year they found themselves in, and the era they found themselves in. We get a bit more of a feeling of how Starfleet is regarded, like people who have heard of them, and they have this kind of, like the one guy in the bar is like, I believe that as you are Starfleet, you are here to help us because I've heard about what Starfleet is. So Starfleet's not completely gone, or at least certainly we know it's not completely gone. We know there are the occasional ship out there because we got told at the end of the last episode, but people still know about them. They haven't been completely forgotten, and people still hope that they will be helped by them at some point. But we're thrown into a very sort of Wild West situation, as I said earlier, where there's some guy that rolls into town every so often and it basically bullies and extorts at gunpoint the locals. And Discovery crew initially try and negotiate with him, and that doesn't work. And then Georgiou turns up, and there's a massive fight, and she kills all of them, basically. Which is very against Starfleet's code of ethics, obviously, and Saru is going to tell her that, and here we see the butting of heads between the two of them again. I like the fact that I feel we're going to have this throughout the season, that we're going to have Discovery and the crew, and particularly Saru and stuff, trying to emphasize and bring back the true ideals of Starfleet. And then you can have Georgiou there as a kind of butting heads with them, but also as a useful kind of tool for things that need to be done to get them out of situations and to save their lives a lot of the time, that you couldn't have the Starfleet crew doing because that would betray their morals. So it's quite a nice way to have to deal with that and have to, bring up that theme of trying to restore what Federation means and what Starfleet means and what being Starfleet means. That's a theme that came up quite a lot in Lower Decks, what it means to be Starfleet. You're going to have the crew trying to re-establish that, and you're going to have Georgiou being a kind of useful tool that they may feel they have to use sometimes, but also one that they're very uncomfortable using. Now, personally, I think shows like Voyager missed a trick in that they always, occasionally they dealt with, how hard it is to keep up with Starfleet ways and stuff when you're so far from home, all abandoned and stuff. I mean, you had episodes where you saw ships which didn't do that. There was that one where they encounter another Starfleet ship that basically betrayed all Starfleet morals. But I would have liked to have seen them grappling with that a bit more than they did in Voyager, given the situation that they were in. And here we've got the Discovery in a very similar situation. And I just get the feeling from this episode that they might be tackling that a little bit more. They'll always be trying to do the right thing and trying to do the moral thing. Sometimes they're going to be able to. Sometimes Georgiou's going to be there to do the non-moral thing that will end up saving them. But they're going to be there trying to push through their ideals. Whereas I don't really feel like, there was lip service to it in Voyager, but I don't feel they really tackled it head on much. Or at least not as much as they should have done. We've also got this kind of very sci-fi idea of the parasitic ice that is giving us a kind of ticking time bomb to save the ship, which adds a bit of tension to it. Really like that. It was a nice sort of sci-fi concept that they slipped in there as well. I think it really helped make the plot seem a lot more interesting, having that pressure there. I think, as I said last week's, while there were a lot of individual bits I liked, I thought the plot itself was a bit hollow. Here, I don't think that was the case. I think it was definitely a good amount of plot. Not too much, not too little, just the right amount to give us a feeling of jeopardy and give something interesting for the characters to do, all of the characters to do. But after they've dispatched the bad courier guy, I forget his name, they obviously head back to the Discovery. The ice is winning, and it's only by the intervention of another ship that tractor beams them out of the ice that they are saved, thinking that it will be another courier type bad guy, rival of the other courier that might also try and being a bit aggressive towards them. They're a bit worried, but then on the view screen, of course, comes Michael with long hair, because it's been a year, and we find that out. I mean, I think as soon as that ship turned up, I knew what was happening. It was a little bit predictable, maybe, but I think it was, once that happened, I like I said earlier, I kind of hoped that they were going to keep them separate for maybe a few more episodes, and then we got to see them both searching for each other in parallel. But I think it still worked, and the scene itself, when she appeared on the screen, did generally give me some sort of chills, and I was like, oh yeah, this is, it was a good scene. It was played well, acted well, and I think it was impactful the way they did it. I just kind of wish that they'd carried on a little bit longer with them separate. But it's not going to ruin it. I think it's fine. Now, predictions. Let's do some predictions. This is a section that I've decided to do every week for some reason. So, I hope I have predictions every week. I think a few things from this episode. I think that we're going to get some flashbacks to the year that Burnham was by herself, or not by herself, with Book. We're going to get flashbacks to that. I hope they don't do it as a whole episode. Or if they do it as a whole episode, I hope it's not next episode. I hope they pepper flashback. I would prefer peppered flashbacks throughout the rest of the season to that year and what Burnham was getting up to that year. Where it fits in narratively with the themes of the individual episode. To it just being, baby's crying again. This always happens. I'm just going to have to carry on while the baby cries because I've got no battery left. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I prefer it to be peppered throughout rather than just next episode we find out what happened in that next year and we get another very Burnham-focused episode next episode. I hope it's not that. I also, another prediction, think this might not be the last we see of that bad courier guy. I think he might pop up again later on in the season. He's going to have it out for the Discovery crew now. They've ruined his entire operation. So I think we're probably going to see him again at some point. It may just be for one episode, or he may become a bit more of a recurring sort of villain for the series. In the sort of, maybe in the same way that Harry Mudd did in season 1. Got a bit of a grudge, or will be showing up again. Another prediction, I think that Kaylee's injury, whatever is going on with her, is going to play a factor into something. She's going to have some kind of story arc around that. I don't think it's just going to be this episode. Clearly there was still something wrong with her by the end of the episode, whether or not that's psychological or physical, whether or not it's an injury to the damage to the implants or physical injury that's somehow manifesting itself. Don't know yet, but I think that's going to play out over maybe the rest of the season, maybe just a short story arc, I don't know. But I think it's nice that they're setting up these little character individual stories now in this episode that we know will play out, or at least hope will play out. So yeah, for me, this is probably the best Discovery episode for a while, since early season 2, definitely. So I enjoyed it. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and please do like, share, subscribe, all that jazz, and I'll be back for another review next week. See you then.